to that toolbox.
Oh, gosh.
So, the toolbox doesn't start for many, many pages.
111, not that I counted.
For me, with this one in particular, the thing that I've heard this advice before, and I fucking hate it.
Go
like,
on.
I get it. I understand why it's advice, but I fucking hate it. Which is the, like, aversion to adverbs. I love my adverbs. You will rip the adverbs from my cold, dead corpse.
So first of all, let me just say, I got to the toolbox section and literally screamed out loud, hallelujah. Because this was what I thought this book was.
Yeah.
He, page by page, and he doesn't do this long, drawn-out bullshit. It's like per page, almost to the word or to the section. One is about vocabulary. The next page is about grammar. The next page is about adverbs. The next page is about his pet peeves. Like, it's so quick. There's so little bullshit. It's so dead on the topic. It is actually about writing. Yeah. And I loved his analogy of a toolbox because you can visualize it and he walks you through that visualization. So it's a whatever color toolbox you want. And on the top shelf, you pull it out and you've got these little drawers and here are each of your literary tools that go into that. It's vocabulary, it's grammar, it's whatever. And then when you take those out, you have the shelf underneath. And so not only did I finally have something tangible, visceral for me. I can make my own toolbox. I can relate to the tools that you're speaking of, whether I agree about your treatment of them or not. Adverb cat over here is not fucking around. But it finally felt like the book I had agreed to read.
Yeah.
And that was exciting.
Yeah, it really was.
I'm not as attached to my adverbs, so I wasn't as strong in my reaction to that section. He does not care for them. Don't do it if you're going to submit something for Stephen King to read.
He is in the category of, like, don't use adverbs except for very, very sparingly.
He's also very much in the camp of, which made me laugh, the grammar section, where he goes into, like, he touches on it, and then he basically says, you're either going to get it or you either get it or you don't. But then goes on to tell you everyone you should read so that you know how to use grammar appropriately. And then proceeds to give examples of people who don't and why that works for them. And I was like, piss or get off the pot. Like,
yeah, he's a real simp for Hemingway. Just say it.
Yes. I found him to go sort of very back and forth on the issue of grammar and writing. And I guess maybe there's a lot of gray there. I do think some authors do it beautifully, but like, pick a lane or just state your case for no lane and move on. Yeah. I really like this 1 page per deal that we had going. It felt refreshing and directional and very topical. And I was super here for it. Oh gosh, I'm such an ass. So on the toolbox page, I just summarized the CV section. He grew up poor with issues of some abuse, got married, became an alcoholic and addict. That was like the first 100 pages of this book. Prior to this, the cover page was CV. That was the strangest resume I've ever read. So I loved the imagery of the toolbox. He does give some experience as to a toolbox and how it was handed down to a couple people, and I think why he picked that. Oh, there's one section where he talks about writing and how you can be too descriptive about how you can take those extra words and eliminate any of that unknown, but was that really worth those extra words to paint that specific of a picture? And I have to say, no, please don't do that to me, authors. I really dislike that greatly. But two, it's why I hate when my favorite books are turned into movies.
Yeah.
I love my favorite characters that I love the way they are in my mind. The way that those gray spaces allow me the room to fill in the blanks to whatever I find attractive, whatever my life experience has been, whatever things I get to put from my own being into that space. Yeah. So I appreciate the gray areas.
You know, it's funny. So, like, the thing I hate the most when I write is I hate writing super descriptive things. I don't like spending my time on detail like that, but I also don't read detail. I skip those sections when I'm reading out of my own, like, pleasure.
You're a skimmer too.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, you're telling me what this person looks like? It's too bad. I already know what they look like in my head, so don't really care what you say. Skimming through this until we get down to the next part. And I realize this because, you know, I know from reading my own writing that, yes, I don't give a lot of descriptive detail. I'll be like, so-and-so, like, when did this thing here? And it's like, no, fill in the room yourself. Why would you want me to tell you what the room looks like? And when it's come to reading, both Stephen King and my efforts to read Anne Rice, the thing I've always had an issue with both of them is they're too descriptive. Please don't tell me the ornate detailing on the door. I don't care. First of all. Second of all, if I decide that the door has detail, I will decide what it fucking looks like.
I skim for that exact reason.
Yeah.
And that's why I think rereading books has become so important to me, is because I can then go my second pass, my third pass, and I pull something out that I maybe glossed over.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I don't know where I heard or read it, but it was someone just saying, make every word count. And I love that Sir Stephen King over here points out you don't have to put in every single word. And in fact, does it matter or does it detract from what you're ultimately trying to say? And I think a lot of authors think to be good, I have to put in everything. I have to fill in all the spaces. I want you to see exactly what I see. And one, I don't think it's humanly possible, or the amount of words it would take to make that happen, even at 90%, would make it miserable to read.
But do you think that is because they are people who they're very controlling, basically? Because you will hear authors who kind of get upset about, like, well, he's supposed to be like this. This character is meant to be this way. Do you think it's a symptom of that, where these authors are trying to do that because they don't want to give you the room to think of something different because that's not their vision?
So this is something I struggled with while reading this and also coming up with material to talk about, because I think overall I've not been overwhelmingly kind.
That's okay.
Sort of. This is his art.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sensitive to that. And I think he's sensitive to that. You hear about how he talks about having to learn to deal with criticism. And it certainly comes up more than once in literary critics and different references that he makes throughout the book. And so to some degree, I understand. I understand when you create something, especially things that are so driven from his life, from his personal experiences, that you then put all that time, put all that work, put all of yourself into that creation, and then you send it out into the world where people are assholes. I, right now, in this podcast, have been a bit of an asshole to Stephen King. And so I understand that need and want for control. I want to at least have out there what's mine, because other people are going to take it anyways and misunderstand it and misconstrue it and misalign it with what my intentions and meanings were. And so it makes it a lot less pleasant for consumption. But I understand why people have those control issues. I think of something that I write for fun and how terrifying it is to share that with loved ones. Those are safe people. Those are people that like me. Those are people that are going to, even if they dislike it, potentially bold-faced lie to me or be really soft about it.
It is true.
So that
very true.
Act of then putting it out for the public. These are people that don't know you, that don't care about your feelings, that don't even acknowledge you.
Some of them actively want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. As a human being in our society and culture in the realm of social media, you don't get that credit of being a human on the other side of that computer.
God, no.
So I understand the feeling of, at least I want it to be mine. If you're going to fuck with it, you're going to mock me for it, you're going to be cruel about it, at least I made it exactly the way I saw it in my head and made it the way I wanted. And that's how it's going into the universe. Unfortunately, I think that control, I think that fear, and actually Stephen King talks a lot about not writing from a place of fear. I think that it's so important, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to present myself on paper or through my creative outlets without fear, without that flinching of what's to come on the other side of things.
Yeah,
so,
that's very human.
Yeah.
You know, like you said when you sat down, you were a little anxious.
A little bit.
You know, and I will say, like, that is how it feels every time, like, even releasing one of these. When I'm loading it onto the website to hit that button of schedule.
Well, this is even more bare. There's not a piece of fiction, air quotes fiction, to hide behind.
Yeah.
There's not a fake monster. This is actual real people talking as their real selves and giving their thoughts and opinions and whatever to be shared with the universe. I'm not going to lie. I actually found the games that I've played with the podcast a lot easier than this.
Yeah.
Because I can lean into a 14-year-old girl with some attitude that likes to smoke pot and pretend to be that girl and hide behind her. Like, well, that's not really my life or my experience. That was just me channeling that character. Whereas, no, this is me. I swear this much. I said that thing. This is how I feel. If Stephen King were to tweet me, if we were back in the land of Twitter, it'd be like, you bitch. And I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I was sort of like, it's very out in the open.
Yeah.
In a way that some of the games, for instance, aren't.
Like on Book Talk, they talk a lot, on Author Talk, I should say. Because you get these authors who go in and they read their reviews and they get very upset. Some of them do crazy shit. One person, tracked down somebody who gave them a bad review. There was one horrific dude who, took a bad reviewer and put them into their body horror story. There are some fucked up things people do.
Sir Stephen King, I say this as someone who doesn't know shit, so don't come after me.
But I think that's the important thing. Has learned that the thing that everybody preaches a lot on those platforms of reviews aren't for the author or for the creator. They're for other people trying to decide, is this something I want to consume?
Well, look, and I also think not every review is built the same, right?
No.
Sometimes you have other people who are very much in your circle, who are very much, it's like the food critics. Like, they go and eat food all day and they test and they do that, and they have a certain reputation.
Yeah.
And their words carry weight that can actually impact your livelihood.
Yeah.
Then I think you have people like us who are doing this as hobbyists, who are delving into things they enjoy and being honest about their experience with it. And then I think you have people who are just mean a-holes for the sake of being mean a-holes. Like, I'm going to go wreck somebody's day, or I'm going to go and look, like the insult comics, right? Like, there's a place for that. There is. And sometimes it can be funny and sometimes it's its own craft. But I do think a lot of it's sort of intent driven. I don't think Stephen King's going to give two shits what I have to say.
No. I make jokes about, because I see stats about where people are listening to this podcast.
Oh, do you have any listeners in Maine? I'm dying.
We do not. But I make jokes because there is one state that's near Maine where somebody listens, and I'm like, I like to think that it is Stephen King's editor who is waiting for the lawsuit.
Oh no!
He's just listening until he finds the thing that he can come after us for. We make no money, so there's nothing to take.
Don't get litigious.
So I do think that it's fun to think about. Just make up in your brain this is what it is.
What's funny though is Stephen King, the actual writer, not the person, not the dude with the childhood, not the man who inserts himself into the stories, but the actual writer, the gentleman who decided to put his desk in the alcove or the eave because writing shouldn't be the center of your world. Your world should be the center of your writing, sort of. I don't think that's an exact quote, but that was how he described it. And the man who found a way to carve out this profession for himself in the midst of living his life with the wife that he loves and his kids and his family and all of the other things that the world can throw at you, and the man who reveres writing and in the way that he does, and I think does take it very seriously. I actually wrote on one of the pages, oh, so he worships at the altar of writing. Okay, I got that. Like, this makes sense to me now. That guy, I'd love to just sit and have coffee with him and not bother him with a bunch of questions, but ask him what he thinks people should know that they don't. And just let him talk and just see what's in that amazing vault that I could then incorporate into whatever my cause or my goal is. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Sort of, just like reading a book. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to loathe it. There's going to be a bunch of people in between. It's like art. As much as it's about the artist and their creation, it's about the person ingesting it, the person sort of absorbing it and what's in them and on their side. Do I get that reference? Do I get this? Stephen King was hard for me to read because he would make quips about things or analogies about things, and I'd be like, come again? And my 9-year-old will tell you I'm ancient, but there were Stephen King things in this book that were dated that I had no point of reference for. He tells the story about the stamps, collecting enough stamps to buy a house.
I was so confused by that too, yeah.
And they're green stamps, and you can use them if you get enough of them to buy real shit. It's something I picture as being the Monopoly game now. But instead of having to get the sets, you just collect them, and then they have some sort of actual cash value. But it took me a while to get there, because I was like, what'd you talk about?
You know what? I think you bring up something very interesting, though. Do you think that Stephen King could have carved out the same kind of career for himself if he were writing now, starting now, versus when he did start, where we have things like AO3, fanfiction.net, even Reddit, Am I the Asshole-esque pages where you have...
I love that page.
people who, you have also the, Am I the Angel, which are the spoof ones where people will exercise their creative writing on these websites.
I'm sorry, you just blew my brain. There's an Am I the Angel, and it's people creative writing the reverse to the Am I the Asshole?
Not reverse. They're just making Am I the Assholes, but with the understanding this is fake.
It's making The Onion, but for Am I the Asshole?
And it's Am I the Angel, and people will come on there and you'll hear people.
I know what I'm doing with the afternoon. Go on.
You will hear people who are creative writing students. They've been assigned to go on, and they're supposed to write these. And I'm assuming there's probably some factor of what kind of engagement do you get when you write these sort of stories.
If I may.
Yeah.
In this day and age, with the amount of exposure and opportunity and platforms, if Stephen King were to be starting now, I think it would be hard because it's easy to get lost.
Yes.
Right? You don't have to rely on a publisher anymore to get published, but neither does anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
So sifting through and raising your voice above the din of everybody else, I think is the challenge. But with that said, I think if Stephen King showed up and still had his persistence, it wouldn't be rejection letters, it would be, an engagement of 3 that he would be dealing with on the day-to-day. And he showed up with that same perseverance and what is quite determinedly his own style. I think he does have a voice that is different from most authors I've encountered. It's not a voice I particularly enjoy, but it is his own. And when you can have your own voice, you can stand out. The people who do enjoy that voice will come to you. It's sort of that same principle of be your authentic self so that your tribe can find you. And I think he's very early on, and then continued to find his authenticity and his voice and who he wants to be as a writer and an author. And the people who do respond really positively to that voice find him. So I think, yes, I do believe he would still have a high level of success, even in this day and age. I think it might take longer, which is saying something because it's not like he was an overnight success before. But I do think it's harder to sift through all the shit.
Yeah.
You're just wading through information and...
There's so much content.
Yes, exactly. And so I think just like he did, he would have started with a lot of... 3 people saw this, and then he would have had the one thing where suddenly the engagement is at 100, and then he would have had his modern day version of Carrie that would have sort of been the thing that catapulted. And then once you get that momentum, we're such a quick moving consumption society that people would have continued to clamor for more. And with his diligence and dedication, had he been able to consistently churn out content, I think he would still achieve the similar levels of success. That's my guess.
No, I think it's a valid view on it. Because the CV was long and drawn out and unnecessary. But it does show his persistence.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the thing dedication. I admire the most about the whole thing. I think genuinely, if he hasn't already, I want him to find a really good therapist for the things that he endured as a child and the way in which he conveyed them. I don't know. There's such a difference when you talk to someone who's suffered trauma between someone who's going through it, someone who's stuffing it, and someone who's processed it. It's just a very different language, and even like their physical body is different. And so you can be talking about something you've processed and be crying and be upset, but also there's an amount of relaxedness that when you've stuffed it, let me stop using the you, when I have stuffed it, my shoulders are tense, my jaw tightens up, I get this ugly red spot on my cheek because I don't want to talk about it and I'm uncomfortable and I'm trying real hard not to cry. That's my stuff that has been stuffed. I don't know this man, but I read that dry matter fact stuff and went, oh, that's uncomfortable as the reader. I have to imagine it's uncomfortable for the author. Maybe not. Maybe that was the goal. Maybe the goal was to make me uncomfortable. I don't think that's not his goal sometimes.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think that's where he, angles himself when it comes to his actual, fiction. Let me make you uncomfortable. Have a seat.
I wish uncomfortable didn't equal... And maybe it doesn't, but I come back to his absolute vitriol against predictable. And so maybe that is the antithesis for him to predictable is uncomfortable. If
maybe.
You're uncomfortable, then you're not.
I think a lot of authors do view it that way of just if I make you uncomfortable, then obviously it was not predictable. And it's no, discomfort can totally be predictable too.
Yeah. It's like the jump scare.
Yeah.
I don't love it. It don't feel good. But
I know it's coming.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The Haunting in Venice, or whatever the adaptation was of the most recent Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
I'm not scared when you do the jump scare, but I also know they're coming. In the good section, the toolbox section, he says a couple things that made me laugh. This one didn't make me laugh.
That line did not bring you joy.
Sorry. So he talks about the grammar thing again, and he says, those really incapable of grasping grammar, as I am incapable of playing certain guitar riffs and progressions, will have little or no use for a book like this anyway. In that sense, I'm preaching to the converted. So he's talking about if you get grammar great, you're one of the converts, and if you don't and you can't, then... this book is going to be lost on you. So again, there's a mild element of condescension. But my response to that was, if the premise here is this, I either get it or I don't. I have no buy-in to read this. Like, if I get it, cool, I'm done, I'm good, I'm out. And if I don't, it's not going to benefit me anyway. I struggle with Senior King sometimes. He's talking about, again, like grammar and adverbs and things like that. And he said, the reader must always be your main concern. Without constant reader, you are just a voice quacking in the void. To which I wrote, I don't mind quacking.
We love a duck.
I understand that he's passionate about sentence structure and how to best get your point across to the reader. But also, the reader is not the end-all be-all, are they? Then you're looking to write for the recipient, who's going to be different unless you're writing a book for an audience of one. Unless you're literally writing a book to give to someone else, and that's the only person that's going to read it.
Yeah.
Then how do you make the reader the objective? This is my motivation. I don't know. I don't mind quacking. That was my 2 cents on it. And then he referenced Swifties, but he was talking about Tom Swift, not
Which
Taylor.
I thought was hilarious.
Same. And because I, again, have a 9-year-old who worships Taylor Swift, and I call her T-Swizzle simply because it makes my 9-year-old furious. But I saw the word Swifties and about fell off the couch. I was like, wait, what?
Different kind of Swiftie.
There was one thing that really bothered me in the toolbox section, which was strange because I was really used to being bothered in the first section. But the toolbox section I was much more invested in. I was much more interested in. These were tangible things I could actually write and see if they worked for my style of writing or my goals with my writing. And he talks about, I taught writing for a year at the University of Maine and had one class loaded with athletes and cheerleaders. They liked informal essays because he's talking about how worthless not worthless, but how rudimentary, that's a better word, the informal essay is. He says, greeting them like the old high school friends they were. I spent one whole semester fighting the urge to ask them to write 2 pages of well-turned prose on the subject of if Jesus were my teammate. What held me back was the sure and terrible knowledge that most of them would take to the task with enthusiasm. Some might actually weep while in the throes of composition. And I wrote, this is the spirit of a teacher? It actually made me sad. Like, I understand the informal essay, but are we back in high school again, where we're making fun of the cheerleaders and the jocks and we're calling them all stupid? Because that's sort of what you've done here. And why didn't you? You were their fucking teacher. Why didn't you ask them for that two-pager on if Jesus was their teammate and see what they came up with? And if it was shit, help them make it not shit.
Yeah.
It's just low-hanging fruit. And I think he's so much better than that.
Well, and it's like, it's your job to teach them writing, so teach them the writing. Like,
push them. If the informal essay is low and easy, great, give them one of those. But then give them the next thing. And maybe by the end of your class, they're writing that 2-pager on Jesus. I don't know. I've known so many amazing teachers over the years, and I watch them as my daughter goes through school. They're amazing. They work their butts off to push kids to get further and work harder and just do more every time. And that seemed like the laziest version of teaching to me. And I'm sure that's not all he did. Maybe that was just meant to be a cute quip. And I didn't find it quippy. It didn't land well for me.
Well, and I can say, because we are in the middle of The Shining, we get Jack, who he looks at the kid that he ends up beating the shit out of. And I would argue that he sees a young version of himself, of just like this cocky kid who's got all this potential ahead of him. Whereas Jack is now, he's a dad. Older. He's done with college. I think that he thinks his potential is never going to be realized, and he's also afraid of his potential as well.
Sure.
And so
he missed his chance.
Yeah, and he looks at that kid. I think his name's George, and he decides that he needs to teach George basically real life by fucking with the timer, telling him you stutter too much and kicking him off of the debate team. He does all these things that are like...
Is that the kid whose arm got broken?
No, he breaks his son's arm.
Okay.
George supposedly was slashing his tires after he got cut from the debate team, and Jack basically blanks out and beats the shit out of him, a 17-year-old. I do think that there is just that reminder that, yes, I don't think Stephen King beat the shit out of some random kid, to be clear. But
I
just
hope not.
that part of you when you see someone so like yourself,
yeah,
but with everything ahead of them.
They still have the time to learn and do it.
Yeah, and you look at them and go, well, I don't like them, and you have an emotional seizure to that scenario, to those jocks, to those cheerleaders. Any one of them could be an incredible writer if given the proper attention. But, you know, I mean, what's the whole thing that they teach you in high school when you're getting bullied is that, you know, nerds will inherit the earth, that kind of bullshit. And that's how we're supposed to like get through it. And so if you were, it doesn't sound like Stephen King was necessarily unpopular in school based on his CV. But if you have someone who, even when he was looking at joining the military, his mom's like, Steve, you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
No, you're not fucking joining the military. That's stupid. When you are basically the antithesis of that, of course, you're going to look at them and be maybe a bitch about it, frankly. You're not going to have the best interest of your students in mind. It's a shitty thing.
Yeah, no, I can completely see that. I had a really hard time understanding Stephen King, even through the stories of his childhood. I didn't understand necessarily where he was being funny, where he was being tongue-in-cheek, and I started the book that way, and I'm still that way. I don't understand if this is meant as a joke. I don't understand if you're being serious or sarcastic. I can't put my finger on, are you still traumatized? You know what I mean? Like,
the answer is yes. He is. He has to be.
I find that off-putting, if I'm being honest. I like to know where I stand with the author, or at least with the subject matter in the book.
Yeah.
And tone. And I don't know if it's just that I'm not accustomed to his really dry, direct style, or if that's intentional, or if I've just not encountered a Stephen King before, and so I am still working on understanding him. Oh, one other thing I noted early on in the CV section, sorry to take us back to those doldrums. Do you remember the story about when he sold the fake school newspaper that he made?
Yeah.
And he got caught.
Yeah.
And there was a female teacher that he had done parodies basically of all the teachers and made funny names for them and given them funny descriptions, but it was blatantly obvious who each teacher was.
Yeah.
And sold them to his classmates and very dutifully signed them. An adorable dumbass. And so one of the kids drops them or turns it in, and he gets dragged into the office and in trouble. And most of the teachers seem to be pretty good sports about it. But there was this one woman who was genuinely hurt by what he had written and acted accordingly, wanted him punished, wanted all of the things. And at the end of that chapter, he had gotten nominated for something. It was a club or a, like National Honor Society-esque sort of thing. And she blocked it. She blocked his nomination and said, oh, we don't want kids like you in there. And his takeaway was, I realized then she didn't like boys. And I was shocked. Look, that lady didn't sound like a very easygoing person and maybe not great teaching material. But, sweetheart, she just didn't like you.
Yeah. you were an asshat.
You got marked in her brain as a troublemaker. She treated you as such and went out of her way to do it. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like she was not the adult in that situation that you hope the adults will be. But that felt like such a leap to me. And I don't know if we were just missing more data or what, but I went, how did you get from that lady was a bitch to you, to she's completely anti little boy. Like, she just...
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, especially because, like, there also doesn't sound like there's anybody on that committee who was really going to bat for you either.
No.
They weren't willing to say, you know what, no, I know that he's had some trouble, some things that he's done, but he is so good at this, we should. We need to,
him.
like, this could be the thing that turns his life around. No one was going to bat for you either, so just saying, maybe a little bit distorted on what you think's happening.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, we do that, right? Especially from the lens of a child. But as an adult, to repeat it, to have no reflection back, to be very certain in that assertion, was startling. It seemed like a bit much. Okay, full disclosure, I was using the cards to mark pages, so we're going to need to shuffle these really well.
That's great, because then we can show that it's not stacked.
Oh, heavens, no.
Control over what cards are about to pop up.
No stackage.
All right. Pull our card.
Okay, so we have been properly shuffled. I have pulled the Hermit.
Oh, okay. The Hermit. We got major arcana going on.
Yeah, we do.
So, the Hermit, walking alone atop white mountains, is a symbol of introspection and solitude. He has achieved much, as indicated by his position at the top of the mountain range. His lantern is meant to guide his own journey as well as the seeker below him. Even though the Hermit has summited the mountains, he is still searching for answers, as we are still searching for answers from Stephen King about writing.
All the things.
This actually seems like a very appropriate card.
I'm a little shocked, to be honest.
So, we are going to be continuing, and hopefully we will... You know what? Is Stephen King supposed to be the Hermit, I guess, at the top with his little lantern?
I don't know. I feel like the Hermit a little bit because he's looking down and his shoulders are a little hunched over. He looks a little weary.
And he did just climb a mountain range.
Well, and he's holding that lantern like, dear God, somebody guide me. And I'm just feeling that a little bit.
So we are going to be finishing on writing. So the second half of the book, from the page that says on writing forward, there's no number. There's not like chapter numbers. So this is the best way I can do, guys. But regardless, we're going to finish the rest of the book next time. And
I'll try not to bitch as much.
I mean, maybe we'll actually learn anything more about writing. We'll have more toolbox-esque sections.
I'm not gonna lie. Challenge, accept or deny as you wish. I'm gonna try writing something just of my own volition because I wanna. And then I'm going to try writing the same thing with his rules so far that he's laid out. And there are quite a few, and they're specific.
I love this.
So, do it with me?
Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. I want to see what comes out. If his rules are, I'm sure they're appropriate, but would I personally enjoy the end product more or less with or without?
Love it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Tune in next time to find out how the fuck this goes. We will not take Taryn's place. I will Frankenstein together some like clips of how they would send you off and have it follow this sentence that I'm finishing now.
We could never take Taryn's place.
No.
Well, join us on Patreon. Patreon's another world. Find us over there. There are other worlds than these. Go find them. Okay, bye.
You can email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram, and check out our Patreon. All links can be found in the description of our episodes.
We work really hard for the Patreon, and Megan gets mad if we don't say that.
We work hard for that money.
So hard for that money.